Last week, I exposed southeastern Ontario's lake seeking legal personhood, a silent body of water needing this shadowy guardian council to speak on its behalf. When I questioned the chief behind it, who happens to own a consultancy firm primed to profit off of all of this, he dodged every question and called me racist, then cried misinformation. So let's dive in. The story of the Personhood Initiative of Rice Lake in southeastern Ontario has everything: Indigenous rights, environmental activism, and a hefty dose of potential conflict of interest. This body of water is suddenly seeking legal personhood, which I suppose sounds noble, but if you do more than scratch the surface, it starts looking a lot like a setup for profit, courtesy of the very chief pushing this initiative. And of course, when I tried to ask those very tough questions, I got called racist and accused of spreading misinformation, but zero actual answers or any clarifications were even provided. Now, before we get into that, let's run through a quick history lesson because Rice Lake, well, it wasn't always this picturesque recreational spot that it's known for today. Back in the day, it was essentially a swampy marsh, shallow and full of wild rice beds that, yes, Indigenous peoples, like the Mississaugas, relied on for food, for trade, and ceremonies for thousands of years. But because Rice Lake sat in the middle of large land masses, it was eventually eyed as a valuable trade and transportation route by European explorers. In the 19th century, everything changed. The Hastings Dam, which was built around 1838 as part of the Trent Severn Waterway, raised the water levels in Rice Lake by almost 2 meters. That flooded the marshes, drowned the wild rice, and turned it into the deeper lake that we now know, which has created the perfect conditions for things like fishing, boating, and generated lots of tourism. Now, there was even a railroad at one point that crossed this lake, the Cobourg and Peterborough Railway, with its massive 5-kilometer trestle bridge that was abandoned in 1861 after suffering severe ice damage repeatedly. Remnants are still out there underwater, and the locals know where these spots are to navigate them appropriately. The point is that this lake has been altered by human hands for centuries, and now suddenly it needs rights like it's a person. Does that mean that it should be brought back down to its natural low water swamp levels? Or now all of a sudden it's an issue more than a century later? Now, driving this initiative is Chief Tainer Simpson of Alderville First Nation, who is the driving force behind granting Rice Lake legal personhood, alongside Port Hope Mayor Olena Henkifsky, who I should say has no jurisdiction over Rice Lake, and Port Hope doesn't even border this property.
Genesis of the idea came as well when the mayor of Port Hope, Mayor Hakimsky, she came to my office and she told me about this idea she had and if we would be interested in signing on. And we were thinking that absolutely we would love to. I thought that we should also include Rice Lake on there. So now that's been added to our conversation. So it would be maybe the whole water system around the Ganaraska as well as Rice Lake, because we know there's a lot of harms being done to these systems. There's overfishing, there's pollution, there's development, and we feel like these water systems are in jeopardy if we don't do something. Have the supports and the capacities of Port Hope, which is a larger town than we are, because we know it's going to be an expensive process. The legal process isn't cheap. But at the same time, we're going to be leading, Alderville is going to be leading this process because we do speak with a voice that we feel speaks also for water and the nature elements. Because it is something that we've always protected. As you might know, water protection and water walking has been a major focus of our people for the last several years. And we know that we got to keep that push up, and people are looking to us to keep up the fight.
The initiative essentially grants the lake its own legal team to sue polluters or developers, while absurdly opening the door for the lake itself to be sued, say if the lake dares to splash its waters without consent. It all borders on the absurd, but this push draws direct inspiration from precedents like Quebec's Magpie River, which was granted legal personhood in 2021 specifically to block a hydroelectric dam project. Chief Simpson has been promoting the Rice Lake version on the global stage at the hypocrisy-drenched UN climate conference in Belém, Brazil last month, where he served as an official Canadian delegate, almost certainly with all expenses covered by you, the taxpayer. He claims that this is all about stewardship, protecting the lake his people have cared for over 10,000 years. But again, where were they 100 years ago when the dam was built? And here's the thing. Simpson isn't just a chief. He's the founder and president of Wampum Records, Canada's premier Indigenous consulting firm. That name is a direct nod to the traditional Indigenous shell bead currency that historically served as a medium of exchange, recording treaties and facilitating trade, which positions his company, the one that will potentially profit from this costly Rice Lake personhood initiative, as a modern-day broker in environmental and policy transactions. So because Wampum Records specializes in policy research, government contracts, and Indigenous relations, it's exactly the kind of expertise needed for this initiative. As Simpson himself says, the process will be expensive.
Once you're a person, you can sue for damages. If, say, a developer comes and builds right on you and pollutes into you, you can sue them. But at the same time, say a fisherman has a bad day or he falls in the water or he catches a cold, can he sue the water for that? That's something that theoretically could happen. So we'll have to test that all in court. It's a challenge that I think we're up for, but at the same time, it's something that you have to take the good with the bad, and we will see what those cases could potentially look like.
Take, for instance, a benefit concert in Port Hope that raised over $20,000 to kickstart it. And with shadowy guardians, enforcement, and legal battles on the horizon, there are big bucks at stake. So who do you think is perfectly poised to snag those contracts? Well, it's Simpson's own company. It's like writing the rules and then getting paid to enforce them. Isn't that a textbook conflict of interest? I would say so. Some of you may recall in my previous report that I reached out to Chief Simpson with straightforward questions about all of this. Things like, was his trip to the climate conference funded by taxpayers? How will this personhood be enforced with police like the OPP or Ministry of Natural Resources? How are guardians selected, and will his consultancy firm be involved? What about impacts on local property owners, businesses, and existing rights, rules, and regulations? Any overlap with Wampum Records' government work? His response? Well, it came only after the report was published, and he told me he was away at the Assembly of First Nations, which seems like convenient timing given his firm first announced the initiative on their social media the morning after I sent my request. He called my report a misinformation bonanza and accused me of promoting racist tropes about corrupt Indigenous leadership. A hit piece, he said. Yet he failed to answer any of my questions or offer any points of clarification. But let's remember that asking questions about governance, funding, and conflicts isn't racism. It's just journalism. It's accountability, and Simpson provided none of it. Just deflection. Reporting these facts and Simpson's own words isn't about attacking Indigenous stewardship. It's about transparency. Residents around Rice Lake deserve to know if this is real protection or a pathway to profit for insiders. I've offered Simpson a follow-up to answer that same set of questions, but it's been crickets so far. And the public is watching. The same public that Simpson claims I did a great disservice to, who are truly trying to understand the issues at hand. So why not clarify the disservice and correct the record? In the end, it seems to me like this entire personhood gimmick just slaps another unnecessary layer of HOA-adjacent bureaucracy on top of environmental laws, regulations, and Indigenous treaty rights that already exist, where a vague guardian council with no clear enforcement mechanisms play lake overlord while creating lucrative new consulting opportunities for insiders perfectly positioned to cash in. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. I've filed for access to information to determine just how much Chief Simpson's trip to Brazil cost taxpayers. If you'd like to support our exclusive accountability journalism, please do so at rebelinvestigates.com, and there you can chip in a few bucks if you're able to. That's rebelinvestigates.com.